Hello everyone, Susan from Worldpeacefull, and if it's a little bit of a bumpy ride on this computer, it's only because I'm in a car. I have no home. I am homeless. And I'm going to talk about religious freedom. I've been feeling inspired to do this. So I may pause from time to time because what I often do is go still. I'm a peacemaker. I'm also in alignment with the awareness that God exists. I know that this is true. I don't have a belief in God. I know that God is from personal and direct experience, okay? I've also grown up in a home without religion, and then I had a parent who came back into religion who had grown up in it. So I've heard the stories. I've also had my own experiences of being discriminated against by those who are religious because I wasn't in their eyes. Even though I had a belief in Jesus and in God, I wasn't in their faith. Therefore, I was denied a collaborative partnership in respect of helping the homeless, which is really helping people like myself. I have no hard feelings about that, but I see the division that religion can cause. I also have witnessed the great kindness that's come from religion too. And I'm not only talking about the Christian faith, I'm talking about Islam, Buddhism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism. There's lots of different faiths in the world. But ultimately, it's the one God. Some might see multiple gods, and I'm very at peace with whatever they choose to subscribe to, and it would be arrogant of me to say that they're wrong because I believe this God is far beyond what we even have any comprehension about. I also want to premise this video before I start talking about Turn the Tide, which is an interesting perspective. I also want to clarify some things. I did a video not long ago where I did speak directly to Scott Morrison in the video, who is Christian, and I know that there are many Christians now in our parliament. I didn't know this before, and I have no problem with anyone having a faith, but I do have a concern around groups coming into the parliament to turn parliament into a religion. I don't think that reflects Australians, and I think with the recent marriage equality with the homosexual community, Australians have sent a message to Parliament that they're actually not only tolerant but accepting of diversity. But those within a religious area would say that this is an abomination, this is a sin, and I understand that's their belief. And I have no issue with people having, you can hold negative or positive beliefs, you're going to anyway. But when it comes down to persecuting people, I have real concerns around anything that divides or creates hatred. I remember a specific incident when I was around about, I think 14, I was living in Canberra. There was a gay man who was bashed in the Tilapia Park toilets. Now, it's funny, I always remember this incident because he was beaten badly because he was gay. He was with another man, not with a boy. So we're talking mutually consenting sex. But in those days, obviously, it was unacceptable that this was his preference. Now, I'm not gay myself, but I have friend who is gay, who's an absolutely fantastic, wonderful community person. I've met gay people, lay girls. I remember lay girls in Sydney. I was only about 18 or 19. I remember I had my shoes off. It was a discotheque. Lay girls were there, and they're all transgender. And I always remember I had my shoes off and I was heading up to the bar to get another drink, and I hear this voice going, "Put your shoes on, dear," or something like that, or "Where's your shoes?" And it was a deep voice, and I turned around, and it was the most stunning-looking woman I've ever seen. She was much prettier than me. And I laughed, and that was my first experience with transgender. And then years later in London, I think London, I met another transgender it might have been Brisbane when I was working in market research. This person was in the call centre. We had people taking calls who were doing research. And this transgender lady, she came to our lunch. She had long gloves, beautiful long dress, made up to the nines. And I realised when I looked at her that there was a third gender. I thought, yeah, they're not really female. They are more female than female in actual fact, I felt. Some of them, some homosexual women I'm talking about here, can be sort of coupled in the masculine and the feminine. That's always typically the case. So that gender, or if you like, masculine and feminine's a better way of putting it, is often replicating with gay couples. You can see it. So they are actually replicating the heterosexuals who are in male-female relationships. It's just that they're same gender, that's all. And I do remember distinctly having this very strong impression that this was a third gender. They're often very flamboyant and very creative in ways that, made me look very bland. They're really outrageous, and I liked it. I'm not tolerant. I'm accepting of diversity. I really like what God's created here. And I'm going to speak in this language because this is going to be directed, obviously, at those who are religious. It's inspired by Israel Folau and his payout, $8 million. And I have to say my first thought was, how many homeless people could we be housing with $8 million plus, on the basis of, this is money that this person's being rewarded with by making statements that certain group are going to hell. I mean, is that love? That was my second thought. What's loving about that? Unconditional love is what Jesus taught. And I personally subscribe to unconditional love in my life. I'm not here to say you're worthy, you're not, because that's discrimination. I'm not here to say that you should be like me if they're not. Who am I to say that? Even as a peacemaker, I can't go to someone who's violent and say you should be peaceful. Yes, I think the world's a better place if you are peaceful, and I think you'll have a better life and you'll be happier. But I don't know that person's journey. I don't know what they're here to learn. Because what many in religious areas don't understand is that people are coming through incarnations. They've been here before. Some people are playing out, and some religious people might go, oh, that's not true. I don't mind. This is called diversity. This is what I understand. People come into a new incarnation and they might play the perpetrator, a role. They might have been the victim in the last life. They may have been the perpetrator in a past life and come in as the victim to learn what it's like to be in that position. This is how we learn spiritually. We're here eternally. And I often hear, convergences of agreement in that we are eternal spiritual beings having a human experience. Of course we are. That means we've lived here many times. That's why I take the position of non-judgment, because how am I to know what a person should or shouldn't do? I don't know what they're here to learn. I don't know what their path is. And even in respect of Christianity, my mother was a Christian. She said things to me that were actually not good, that were preached to her, one of which was men are the head of the household. Now, if that man is violent towards me, her belief was he's the head of the household. You do as you're told. I was stunned by that statement. Now, that to me is an absolute distortion of Jesus' teachings, because she was believing the church was Jesus. The church is not Jesus. It's people who are studying biblically theology, theologians, theology, get it right. And they're also filtering these teachings through their own background, their own theological training, their own study of the Bible. But like anything, you can extract whatever you think on the basis of who you are, your personality. I've seen Christians who only extract out of the Bible, love your neighbour, unconditional love, service to humanity. Then there's others who focus completely on the devil. And I just don't resonate with that at all. It's like I just don't. I'm not saying there's not negative in the world. There is. I'm not saying there's not spiritual issues. There are. But what you think about, you bring about. If you keep focusing on it, you're going to manifest it. Because you're fearful. And so you're focusing on the very thing. And I said this to my mother. Stop focusing there. Focus on the love. Isn't that what Jesus taught? The love. Why do you keep focusing on the negative? And the problem with the devil thing is if somebody doesn't like what you say, and I've had this said to me, when I've stood up for things that I think are fair, when I've stood up against discrimination, or somebody saying, well, I only listen to people I agree with, when I've spoken up to that and it created a conflict, I was then judged as a demon was there. It was actually said to me. And I was thinking, how extraordinary is that? If we sat down and really dialogued about what I was saying, I was actually saying, stop being prejudicial to this other person and basically deciding who you listen to on the basis of whether you agree or disagree with them. My attitude was, why not just listen to people? Don't form a judgment. Be open-minded. You might learn something. That was it. But instead I had a projection put onto me that a demon was inspiring me to critique that other party. Now, I'm trained in conflict resolution. We all come at life in different ways. If you're a negative person projecting a negative image, that's negativity. That's not love. And then one can then turn to and say, I was inspired by God to do that. No. God is not in the negative at all. And this is my experience speaking. In fact, I will go still on God, because I believe there's so much confusion in the world about God. Oh, my goodness. Jesus, I feel like saying, help me, you. In fact, I'll ask Jesus to connect God. They're one and the same in actual fact. Some people might go, no, they're not. God, Jesus was a man. No, God spark. Coming as a man. And it wasn't just Jesus. There were many that came and are amongst us today who are the very same thing. And in fact, if we really drill down, whenever you're in a state of loving kindness and love, it's real, you are in that Christ consciousness, and it permeates all religion in actual fact. It's actually what joins us. But let me go still for a moment and I'll just see what I connect with. See Buddha immediately. The Buddha image is this total peace and kindness and love. See, you can feel the love in my face. That's what I'm feeling, is I want to laugh and smile. I feel huge amount of joy when I connect in with the most, see, I may cry even, the highest light is beyond our beliefs. It's beyond our beliefs. It's who you really are when you stop thinking. That's why I go still. So I'm going to connect again. I have to kind of report to you what comes to me. Be at peace is what comes to me, okay? And I'm just going to go still again. Religious freedom's coming up. That was what I was meant to speak about in respect to Morrison in the previous videos I've done. I felt great love for him, but it wasn't meant to be communicated as an endorsement of any particular person. It was just love of God for him. And the words religious freedom came up, and I went, yes, religious freedom. And I just reported what was an inner feeling, okay? And this video is to express and explain what real freedom is. The freedom to be who you are, how God created you. What is God? I see infinite potential immediately. The feeling I have is a vastness that's, you cannot conceptualize the vastness of this extraordinary energy. It's the closest thing I can put to it. That's why the joy is sitting there. It's a joy. No one is unacceptable in this heart centre. No one is unacceptable. No one is ugly. No one is rejected. All are loved deeply, deeply. It's love. It's not a thing. It's not a, we can try and capture it in icons, but it's not. It's actually got no form. It's formless. But it will take the form of anything you want because it loves. This is a love that's beyond space and time, and it is. And it's a love we don't know. We have no concept of. I'm feeling to talk about a woman I met. I may from time to time, I may come to tears because I feel it this way. This is how I know it. See, the joy is just incredible. There's don't know how to put into words the feeling I'm having. Such a love for humanity, such a love. And a recognition of the pain that people are going through too. There's a recognition, but it's not taking on your pain. So God is not sad. God is not sad, ever. From the point of, if there is a point, see, I'm getting sensation that there is no point here in the sense of an origin. It's the all and everything. It's everything. Everything I'm looking at is coming from that creative intelligence that is beyond our own. You can't put it into words in actual fact. I'm very awkwardly trying to express in words something that's wordless. See, the love keeps coming, and it's just love. It's what it is. It's love. I just have to allow it. Because I see such a pain in this world, and it's like it's confusion. We're living in confusion. And those who say that they believe in God, they don't. They don't even know what God is. So many religious people don't know what God is. I'm trying to find a tissue. I may not have one with me. Doesn't matter. We'll just be with that. I'm not sad, by the way. I just want you to know that these tears are not sadness at all. It's connecting to love. And the love is so overwhelming. It's the only way I can communicate it. So going back to the woman that I needed to tell you about, I met this lovely Irish woman, and I was actually looking after a woman who had mental disability. She was about 40, but had the mind of an 8-year-old. Really beautiful, beautiful woman. Simplicity and the innocence in which this woman saw the world. This older woman who I looked after. I used to do respite for her parents. Anyway, a lady stayed with them who was Irish. And I knew she'd had an experience. I knew. So I started talking with her. Now, she told me she had 2 Down syndrome children. Now, this woman would have been in her 60s. She's raised, her kids were 40s, right? So like tears. And she took the children who were adults to Lourdes in France. Now, Lourdes is a place where people have said that Mother Mary has brought miracles. And it's funny, I'm just getting inspiration around Mother Mary now. That's the inspirational source for this message. Just let me sit with it because I need to sit with it. The feminine, the nurturer. This is where the acceptance of diversity comes from. When you're in the masculine too strongly, you think you're right. You think. It says this, I have a right to hurt someone. No, you don't have a right to hurt anybody, although you will do it because you're in ignorance. I want to go now to Lourdes in France. She took her children there. Now, interestingly enough, wanting to heal them. Not that there's anything wrong with these children being Down syndrome, there's not. But she wanted to heal them. Now, she met, her name was Margaret. She met this boy. This boy, he was around 8 and he was very sick, and his parents had taken him to France as well. And they connected, this lovely Irish woman and this boy. I'm trying to think where he was from. I can't quite remember. Can't remember where he was from. Anyway, like his country of origin. And they bonded, and apparently he sent his grandfather's medals to her, war medals, as a token of his love for her. He was young, and he really, really loved her. Anyway, she had a weak heart, she told me. Now, I saw a glow around her, and I knew something had happened. I knew there was something very significant about her. Anyway, she said that she died temporarily because her heart stopped. And she was coming down a barrel. She said it wasn't a tunnel. It was like a tunnel, but it was more barrel, she said. And, see, I may cry because I can feel it. She said there was a light at the end of that tunnel. And she said she says, Susan, she said it was a light that, she said the love, I can't tell you the love in words. The love is overwhelming. I was overwhelmed by the love. And this being who she believed was Jesus, actually. And then she saw this boy's face because he died. I think he had cancer. And he's going, Margaret, I love you. I love you. I don't think he was Irish. And she was marveling at seeing his beautiful face. And as she's moving towards the light, she's feeling overwhelmed by this love that's just, it's without words, my friends. And you can label this Jesus, you can label it God, you can label it Muhammad, you can label it Allah, you can label it Buddha, you can label it in any way you want. It has no name. Love has no name. It's a feeling. And it's an intelligence that it's deeply loving. That's why the stability in the universe is coming from an energy of complete love. And that's what we're here to learn on the planet. We're meant to come together as one. You can say you're a non this and you're a non that. I've heard it all, you know. Whenever I hear the division, I know they don't know God. I know. The minute I hear of intolerance or casting people down or judging, thou shalt not judge, correct? Show mercy. And yet we're having all these wars coming from Christians and Muslims and Buddhists. Look up at in Burma. There was Buddhists that were, shaking their fists. My friend was a Buddhist, and she left her Buddhist center because she saw her fellow Buddhists supporting this aggression that was happening in Burma. We've had the mistakes of the Christian Crusades. People have been persecuted. Witches were persecuted. These were women who were, tuned in. They were misunderstood, but they were believed to be threatening to a dogma. One has to be careful. What do they say? The wolf in sheep's clothing can sound very loving, can sound very spiritual, but they have not dealt with their own negativity and issues. Why did they choose to go into those positions of power? Look at the Catholic Church, pedophilia that's coming out today, sexual repression. Look at the misogyny, the Me Too movement, the suppression of women, where they couldn't even be priests. There's been intolerance in certain areas, because those who have preached at times, not all, there's some also very enlightened preachers too. I actually like I've been in some old churches, and I could really feel that, because of the collective that was there, that were really deeply seeking for something greater. Typically when you suffer, you find yourself connecting. I know I did. I connected more deeply the more I suffered, because I was seeking truth. But I wasn't seeking anything to soothe me. I was seeking the truth, the real truth. I didn't want to be soothed. If God existed, I needed to know. My mother also had an experience where she also said similarly to me. She couldn't know until she could see. And she was taken out of her body and taken above the earth, she said. And she could see a figure beneath her in white. She believes it was Jesus. I don't know if that's true, because she didn't see a face. But I have to respect it. What she believes is what she believes. It's not for me to sit in judgment of her. But it changed her. She then went to church. But nowadays she's moving away from the church, and in fact her and her husband, who are both Christian, are saying that they're now going to follow the way, which I found an extraordinary statement. I had no idea. Because they're not finding it in the church, you see. They're looking deeply for connectedness to this higher power. But like everyone, they're, going through their trials and tribulations. So the key point I'm making here is not to judge anyone. Now I'm going to have a look at this book. I've already had a little bit of a scan through it. But what I don't want is, I just want to state at the very outset that I do not want religious government. And I'm going to just go there first, because I saw what happened in Afghanistan with the religious police. I knew someone who was Afghan, where the women had to cover up completely. They could not be going out in public unescorted by a man, because their religion said that they couldn't go anywhere unescorted. If a woman was raped and 3 men testified against her, she would need 3 witnesses to help her. But if she didn't get that, she could be stoned to death. So it was really weighted against women. Women were really in a very difficult situation. And from my understanding, the extremism that happened in Afghanistan was because of the conflicts, the wars, Russian invasion of Afghanistan, also the CIA bringing in religious, what they called freedom fighters in those days. Depends on what side you're on. They're religious extremists if they're on the bad side, and they're freedom fighters if they're on the good side. But at the end of the day, it's bringing in people who have a religion to fight others who are non-religious, because they are the heathens, right? And this is how religion can be used. So the children that became the Taliban in Afghanistan were actually the orphan children who were raised in the madrasas in northern Peshawar in Pakistan. Now, these children did not grow up with families. They grew up in these madrasas. And they were reciting the Quran in Arabic, which was not their language, Pashto. They were Pashtuns. So Farsi as Pashtuns. They also knew Urdu, which is the Pakistan language. But Arabic was because they sing the Quran. It's very beautiful to hear. I've heard it sung. But it's in another language they don't even understand. And then they've got the mullahs who are instructing them on what it all means. These are male mullahs. We don't have the balance of the feminine sitting there like a family. The reason we grow up in families is because we're balancing the masculine and the feminine. And then they have offspring, children. Children are supposed to have the exposure to both, masculine and feminine. So they then were easily controlled, and they then became the authority at a certain point. And from my understanding of Afghans that I spoke to, they said it was hell on earth. having extreme religion in control. They even had to black out their windows. If a woman was in a car or a vehicle, they had to black out the windows so her face could not be looked upon. They had to cover their faces. They could not have any icons that competed with Allah at that time. Allah Akbar means God is great. In that tradition, of course, I don't know a lot about Islam. I only know mercy is mercy, and that Muhammad married a woman, I think she was 40, she was divorcee, and there was an encouragement of marrying multiple wives because they were protecting the women in actual fact. There's a lot to it, and I certainly don't know a lot about it, but what I do know is from those who lived under religious control that they had to go underground. The girls couldn't get educated. And in fact, the baby girls were killed often because they were seen as less than the males under a religion. So I'm just using that example. Now, from my experience of being under a Christian, I didn't grow up, thankfully, under any control, but I certainly was exposed to religious beliefs that immediately told me that I was less than the man. And as soon as I heard that, wasn't interested. And when there was a focus on a negative entity, I wasn't interested because I saw love as God. I always have since I was very young. So I just wanted to premise that as to I don't want religion in government as a government policy. I have no issue with people of faith coming in because they want to serve humanity or serve the people, but there has to be a mix and it has to reflect the society itself. Australia is a secular society. It's also a multicultural society, and it has many religions. But we do not want mind control through a righteous belief system that thinks it's right and everyone else is wrong, and that's the way of it. I respect that that's their way, and I would never for a moment say don't believe what you believe. I want you to believe what you to believe because I know you're on your own journey. It's not my business to say that you should think differently. But when you impose it on me and you then tell me that I have to live this way, then I have something to say about it because I'm following God in my life. And really, I'm telling you the truth. It's my honest. And all God is for me is love. I have no narrative around it. It's just love. And when I don't love, I'm forgetting that connection. When I do love, I'm remembering it. And I can love everyone. That's why I can love everyone. Because if I'm honest, there's nobody that's unacceptable. And even those who've committed terrible things, I have to find forgiveness for that. Because clearly they're in error if they're creating division or violence. Clearly they're in error because it's not unity. But then what comes out of that is what I'm inspired to look at, what comes out of that. Now, in this book, they're talking about, and I'll read it a bit because I bring up the Magna Carta and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that actually came out of the Second World War. It's out of carnage of 50 million people being murdered, civilians. Universal Declaration of Human Rights emerged because we were not respecting the rights of other people. There had to be a universal statement where we are taught that we must be exercising those freedoms. And in fact, when you restrict freedoms, and that's why I'm for religious freedom, but in the real sense of it, not the freedom to hurt people, not the freedom to demonize. I mean, you'll do it anyway. I'm just saying that I'm no advocate of persecuting anyone. I'm an advocate of true freedom, freedom to dialogue, to resolve conflict. You know, the freedom to accept that diversity is different from me, but they have a right to be who they are. Who am I to be in their business? This is not tolerance. This is acceptance of diversity. I don't know what they're here to learn. It's not for me to say that you should live like me. This is what love looks like. Love steps back and says, you know what? You have to learn from your own life. And I also know that they are guided just like I am. I go still, but anyone can go still. That's where God resides, in the silence, beyond the words. But anyway, I'm going to go into this book. We'll look at some words and see what the words say, because the book has fear in it, and I also want to love them as well. It said the booklet's been written to explain the reasons why Barnabasfund is seeking a new Act of Parliament to guarantee the fundamental aspects of freedom of religion. I'm going to make commentary as I go through this. As far as I'm concerned, in Australia, everybody is free to have religion. I've never seen anyone persecute anyone here. And it's not to say people don't have arguments, they do. But that's freedom. That's how you clash it up. We've also got the Human Rights Commission too, which, if really people are being persecuted, they will, under the law, there will be a ramification for sure. So I'll read on. The freedoms were developed by various mechanisms over the last 5 centuries, including the English common law, the federal constitution, and international treaties, but are now under threat. Is that true? Are they under threat? I have never heard that. An Australian domestic law to protect and guarantee them is urgently needed. Barnabasfund is running a petition on this. Please go to our www.ourreligiousfreedom.org.au. Tracing the heritage of religious freedom takes us back more than 800 years to Magna Carta. That was about the kings and the barons. It was long before the creation of Great Britain, let alone the other countries of the English-speaking world, such as the USA, Australia, and New Zealand. In later centuries, Magna Carta became a rallying cry for freedoms of the English-speaking peoples. For example, those who signed the American Declaration of Independence describe themselves as patriots. Sorry, I'm just going to go still from time to time. I'm just going into, are they patriots? So this is the American Declaration of Independence. They were asserting allegiance to a federal governance that united. It was about unity. So I would probably move a little bit away from patriotism towards unity. They wanted to bring the country together. There was also the issue of the abolition of slavery under Lincoln. And there was huge fight. See, down in the South, and we know who was peopling the South, there was a lot of landowners who were exploiting African people for free labour. Slave labour is free. The fight that was going on there was to actually free the slaves. And it was to unite United States. So the founding fathers, life, liberty, and happiness. It's not very happy when you're a slave. When you're ignorant, you're at a great disadvantage. You've got no education. They had their own belief systems too. They tend to have more earth-oriented sort of spiritual. When I say earth, I mean grounded. They lived on the land. They had their own rituals, their own tribal customs, different ways of expressing gratitude for everything they had. So we have different ways of worship, is the point there. He's saying that they were claiming their ancient rights, which had been set out in Magna Carta and subsequent laws. This is the signing of the independence. That was to do with unity. Sort of libertarianism comes to my mind. Liberty, fraternity, brotherhood is the inner feeling I have. So 1297 Magna Carta is in Parliament House. I've seen the Magna Carta in Parliament. I actually went to the High Court too of Australia when I was contemplating justice, equality before the law. I had a look at the Magna Carta because I was trying to search for human rights. So I'll go past that now. Let's move on. So Magna Carta's ringing call that the English church shall be free, was that true? From my understanding is that the people were going through, and I could be wrong, of course, I'm no expert in this, but my understanding was that the peasants were going through enormous hardship. So the peasants like me, homeless, poverty, were under austerity with the king. I think the king was just totalitarian power. The barons were the sort of landed gentry equivalent. They were the lords, and they basically rebelled against the king. And of course, I would imagine the churches were part of that power structure for sure. But I don't know if the core was the English church. I'm not sure. Foundational to the development of freedom in Australia, is that true? So it's saying here the English church shall be free, even though expressed in the language of its time and context, is an affirmation that was foundational to development of freedom in Australia. Well, certainly the religious beliefs have had foundation in some of them, in the morality. There's truth in that. Okay. The gradual development of full freedom of religion over the centuries after Magna Carta eventually led to 1901 to the Australian Federal Constitution, specifically stating that the Commonwealth shall not make any law for establishing any religion or for imposing any religious observance or for prohibiting the free exercise of any religion. And no religious test shall be required as a qualification for any office or public trust under the Commonwealth. See, that's the Commonwealth of my understanding. So there should be no law made for the establishment of any religion. This is to create a society that's free to choose. I mean, I personally believe we shouldn't have religious schools. I think we should be teaching all religions in the schools, in every school. I personally believe that we shouldn't have strata. So those schools where the children get better education than public schools, I think we should all be the same. That way, then, if you're exposed to all religions, you're going to actually be far more tolerant towards or accepting of different viewpoints because you're going to learn about it. So I would have liked to have learnt about Christianity, Islam, Taoism, Buddhism, spirituality, paganism, all of them. I would have liked to have looked at them all. And then I sit back and I go, okay, what resonates? I might take a bit out of Christianity, I might take a bit out of Islam, I might take a bit out of Buddhism, which is probably what I do. Because I'm looking for truth. I don't really care what packaging it comes in. If it moves me towards unity, I'm all for it. Because equality, and that's what I liked about Lincoln, was that idea of equality. When you see yourself as equal to others, you're not going to look down on them. Oh, look at them, they're a non-this, they're a non-Christian, or they're a non-Muslim. I mean, to me, that's just, you've just divided your world into those who know and those who don't. Well, how do you know you're right? How do you know that the Muslim is not deeply spiritual? How do you know the Christian's not deeply spiritual? Because we're coming from great diversity even within religion. There are some who are deeply, deeply loving. There are others who just project fear because they haven't questioned their thinking and they've not found that deep connection to God. They're looking for it because they're wanting that fulfillment and acceptance. They want to feel peace. That's why they're searching. That's why they often talk about those who are seekers. But when you find the answer, and really the answer is love as far as I'm concerned, when you find that, you can't be a righteous anything. You just sit back and you go, you know what? I love you. How can I sit here and tell you that you should think like me? I can't. Because I, in this dualistic world of love and fear, I may be wrong in my judgment. And if I'm wrong, then I'm causing a harm here. And then you have to look at that when you pass over. Because when we're taken over to the other side, I met a guy, I'll come back to this. I'm not going to talk long on this though. You'll have to look it up yourself and work it out. But I met a guy in the library who told me that he died, and he said he went up through the corner of the room, like a point of light. And he met with people on the other side, and he said that he was told it was his time to die. He literally he died in his sleep, went up through the corner of the ceiling, and he met with people who said that it was his time. And he said, I don't want to die. He said, I want to go back because my children. Now, he told me this in the library. He was told, if you go back, your life is going to be very tough. And they said, do you want to go back? And he goes, yes, I want to go back because of my children. He went back. So you do get a choice even over that. Even though it was his time to go, he had the choice to come back. And I said to him, so has your life been hard? And he goes, yes, it has. I went, okay. I said, how amazing. I interviewed people who died and come back as well, because I wanted to know, is it true? And I figure if you've died and come back, this is as close to evidence as we're going to get until I die and come back. So I met a woman who had died on the operating table, and she remembers rising above her body and looking down and feeling no connection to that body that was on the table. She said there was a lot of colours that she saw, and it was very peaceful, and she did hear a voice. She was also given a choice to stay or go back. Those who have the near-death, they will report to you that they've been given choices. She chose to come back. Another guy I met, he had a car accident, head-on collision, came straight out of his body, and he remembers seeing the police and the ambulance there. He also had voices that said to him, do you want to stay or go back? It was a very bright light that he was in, he said. And he said he didn't want to go back into the pain, he said to me, because the pain, he remembered it. But for some reason, he made the decision to come back. He was in a coma for 3 months. And he said when he came out of the coma, he was speaking to people thinking he was speaking like I'm speaking now. But he said it was all gobbledygook. He said it didn't make any sense because he had 3/4 of his brain exploded on impact. Now, for those who aren't into this stuff, this is going to get a bit, ooh. I'm sitting at the table with him, and he said there were others around us. He could see them, and he described them for me. I can't remember now what he said, who they were. And I just remember this feeling of, oh, my God, it means it's a glass ceiling. So my thoughts are known. And that was freaky for me. It took me time to come to terms with the spiritual reality that your life is actually seen, or your thoughts are known, and that we come back many times. And that was kind of a really big paradigm shift for me. It's like, oh, so we don't just end at death, we go on. And clearly from the near-death experiences, these are the people I spoke to, that's exactly what happened. I met another woman too, who I'll always remember. She was actually a philosophy academic at ANU in Canberra. And she had never told anyone about her story because I'd advertised. I was market analyst at that time and I was working in my own business. But I did this as an interest. I thought it would be interesting to interview people who died and come back, who had out of body, because I asked for both near death and out of body. So she contacted me and we sat down And she then went into her story. She said to me, I was with my husband, and she said, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like I'd had, like she said she saw him slumped over the steering wheel of a car, like it was an accident. And she was really terrified about it. She thought he was going to die. And when she woke up the next morning, she said it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I actually saw it. And she saw a level crossing too, she told me. And she was she had this terrible feeling around her. But she said to herself, it can't be true. And for 2 weeks, she said she had heightened extrasensory perception. She was able to know things that she hadn't known before. She would think it and then see it. I think there was, this is many years ago that I had this interview with her, and I haven't listened to it since, but I remember her saying something about flowers, and she saw the flowers. It'd come to her in her mind, and then she saw exactly what had come. So it was her having this sort of prescience, like a pre-knowledge that something was going to happen, and then it happened. This is not predictability for those who are into that. Bit of humour there. Anyway, she said she felt her mother around her. It was like she was being warned, she said. Anyway, they were going from Canberra to the coast, and they had to go via Brown Mountain. Now, normally, her husband would drive and then she would take over at Brown Mountain. But she said that day she was so exhausted, she had a full-on week. She was a teacher at ANU doing philosophy. She, at the very last moment, said to her husband, I think I'll drive first if that's okay. And he goes, because she just wanted to get out of the way so she could sleep second half. And then he agreed, gave her the keys, and off they went. And she said that they're driving, coming down Brown Mountain, and I know where she was. I've forgotten the name of the town, though. They're coming down the mountain and through this, up to this next town, heading towards Tarsra, actually. And she then said that her husband just went accident. He put his arm across her, and they saw bright lights and accident. And then they were out. Head-on collision, 160 kilometres an hour. And she woke up in a hospital months later. She also was in coma. Police came to interview her about the accident. I always feel sad from what I'm about to say. When she saw that accident a month or so before, she didn't know that because they had 2 daughters in the back seat. One of her daughters died. And it was very painful to have lost her husband. Her husband was slumped over the steering wheel, and there was a level crossing. So the husband and the daughter died on impact. Yeah, I feel sad. This was a huge pain that she carried. She had no one to talk to because people don't believe this stuff, you see. They will go, oh, no, it's not true. She had no one to talk to because of that skepticism. Because we're not talking about these things, and we should be. It's been, since time immemorial, people have spoken about other lives, past lives and so forth. And, spiritual experiences happen all the time. Anyway, this knowing that she had, she said, didn't leave her after the accident. She tried to deny it. She tried to push it down because she was a rational thinker, academic. Didn't want to go there. And she can only report to me that it was her mother that she believed who had died, who was warning her about the accident that was coming, which is why she saw it beforehand, she believes. And the sad part about that story was that the daughter that was alive and her, they couldn't reconcile. They couldn't heal over this. terribly painful. And this happened in the 70s, and I interviewed her in the 90s. For 20 years, she'd been carrying this. And I actually thought, I should do more of this interviewing, because I could actually be helping people heal, because they need someone to talk to, because who's going to believe them? That's how primitive we are. We haven't even begun to have the discussion about who we are and why we're here. And yes, we have religious beliefs that are taught to us through books, but the experience of God is direct. I have it direct. I know it. I'm inspired, without a doubt. My life is moved. In homelessness as well, it's like, I trust. I have no money. I have $1.60 in my bank account because I'm not on Centrelink. I'm not on welfare. I had a conscientious objection with the system because I saw that they were engaging in behaviour that was corrupt, and they weren't seeking my interests in terms of getting work for me, because I'm a peacemaker. Tell me where the job description is for a peacemaker. I'd have to join an international NGO, but at my age, that's not going to happen. Unless you've got a career in this area that's approved of, validated in some way, you've worked for the UN or whatever. Very hard to get work as a peacemaker. So consequently, I've just had to, in the past, I've had to just accept the bare minimum and keep working on peace, which is my work. It's not even work, it's calling. And I'm not saying I'm super peaceful. I'm not. I'm a passionate person. I have my weaknesses too. And there's times when I judge as well. So I'm not holier than thou, so don't worry. I'm certainly not preaching that I'm the greatest example, but I try my best, and I definitely can say that I love everyone. I can say that for sure. And I can definitely say that my heart and my thoughts are often in a space of love. When I catch myself in judgment, I'm now conscious enough to say, okay, that needs questioning. You can't judge that person. You don't know what they're here for. But what you can do is be a presence of love. Because how is someone going to learn love if you're not projecting it? If you project judgment, persecution, and you start spreading ideas that, you're a victim, because that's really powerful, being a victim. Because then, it's like, this person's done this to me. I could say I'm a victim because I've been cut off Centrelink. I could say I'm a victim because they won't give me my superannuation under hardship. I could say I'm a victim because I can't access homeless services because I'm not on Centrelink. But I don't see myself as a victim. I say to myself, well, this gives you the opportunity to fully trust God, doesn't it? You say you believe in it. Well, is your life supported by a higher power? Yes. My friend just filled up my tank. It's full. I've got no money. I've got enough food to last me a month. I've now got a house sit coming. Got shelter. Isn't that incredible? What a blessing is that? See, I feel to cry again because I know my life is supported. I'm going to tell you another story, actually, and this is to just remind people that God comes in many forms and it comes to many people, and you don't have to say, I believe in Jesus in order to have that love. It's not conditional love, it's unconditional love. And yes, I have connected to Jesus, but not to religion. I haven't connected to the religion, but I'm open to some of the stuff in it. Some of the parables I could see great truth in. So it's not a hard and fast anything. I just go for truth. I just feel the inspiration through love. I really do. And I know that everyone is loved. There's nothing you have to do for it. It's unconditional love, truly. So I was telling you a story. See, the inspirations come to me again. That's how I know. Now, it was with a guy I met who was a Quaker. They are Christians. They tend to be very politically active, the old Quakers. They're interesting. They refuse nicks. They don't go to war, things like that. I met this guy, had a relationship for a short time with him. And and I'll just tell you that in the middle of the night, I was awake, and I'm just going to tell you what happened because this is true. Words came into my mind. The first one was, I send you love. I send you peace. Sorry, it was, I send you peace. Your work is blessed. And I went, that's interesting. You could say, well, who's I send you peace? Good question. Now, this guy, he wakes up next to me and he goes, word for word, I send you peace. Your work is blessed. And I just went, I didn't say that out loud. Why? And then he went straight back to sleep. And I was like, oh my God, this is confirmed. Next day, I took him to where he needed to go. And I said, do you remember what you said last night? He goes, yes, I do. I said it in an email. That's right. I didn't say anything to him. I wrote to him. And being the analyst like I am, I can be a bit scientific. So I wrote to him and I said, do you remember what you said last night? And I said it in writing because it's in my book, A Fool for Peace. You're welcome to have a look at it. You can download the free PDF or you can buy my ebook. Go to my website, www.worldpeacefull.com. The reason I say that is I've got no money. Please buy my book. That's another coffee for me. I'm buying dollar coffees at the moment with the little I've got left. Anyway, it's all good. Everything I've got is what I need, okay? Need equals want is where I live. So I wrote to him. He writes back to me, yes, I do remember. He said, I have real issues with the way you live because there's no structure to it. I was floating around like I am now. And he said, I remember saying, I send you peace. I'd have to look in my book again. I'm pretty sure I've put the email in there. And your work is blessed. And there it was, confirmed for me. And that gives me comfort. You know, when things have been tough, I just go, my life is blessed. But you know what? Everybody's life is blessed, actually. You've got to see the blessing. Like, I could sit here as a victim and go, oh, look, everything's in my car, which it is. I could say, I have a right to this and a right to that. And, you know, I am certainly going to assert rights because there's 116,000 homeless people behind me. So, yes, I am going to speak up for sure because some of them may suicide believing that no one loves them and they're not cared about when they are. So I feel a sense of social responsibility. Anyway, I'm going to go back to this book because I know the time is running out here and I don't want to go for too long. So what they're saying here, there's some religious stuff, so I'll read that. We believe that God's hand has been over this nation. I'm going to add in, it's over every nation actually. Since its foundation, it's not a he, sorry guys, I love you dearly, but no, it hasn't, it's actually got no sex whatsoever. This love energy is love. But we call it he. How do you know? Because Jesus was a guy. Yes, but the Creator has created planetary systems beyond Earth, which are not peopled by humans. There are extraterrestrials out there. I'm throwing that one in. And they're not humans. So, you know, the male-female thing, what about amoeba? Amoeba have no gender. This high intelligence that's got no sexuality because it doesn't replicate itself. It is all of it. It is not of one gender over another. Sorry, someone has to say this because nobody ever questions it. Anyway, since its foundation, he has guided, blessed, provided for, and protected her. Who's her? The nation now is a she. Through 2 world wars and other times of great turmoil, God, through the prayers of his people, has protected her. We've been here 1 minute to midnight on the earth, humankind. Love embraces all creation beyond earth as well. It is the source that is created, and the science is also true. The physics, chemistry, evolution, because we see clearly that the planet has evolved and the peoples and the species system have evolved in harmony with the earth, with change, adaptation, functionality, sustainability. Being able to adapt is critical in order to sustain life in harmony with the planetary systems. I'm just adding that in because I'm getting inspiration there. Okay, it says, we believe as a nation Australia has again left the pathways of God. How can you say that? We believe that as a nation Australia has again left the pathways of God. How do you know this is not the pathway back to God? Forsaken his laws. Well, what are the laws that have been forsaken? Unconditional love. God's law. I'm going to go into God's law. Cause and effect. That's science, right? That's God's law. God's law. What you think about, you bring about. What you focus on, you expand. What you resist persists. What you look at disappears. I'm just going in a bit deeper. Harmony is God's law. Equilibrium, equality is God's law. These are laws that we keep coming back to. So we may experience the opposite of love in order to bring us back to love. So you have to go through what you're not in order to find who you are. That's how you recognize it. If you're on the other side and it's all love, you're not going to know the opposite. You're not going to know love in actual fact if you're on the other side, because you'll have no contrast. So the purpose of duality, which is the earth walk between love and fear, is to give us contrast so that we can see love. The whole point is, this whole idea of the fallen is really, we've come into a world that has both light and dark, the yin and the yang. You, from that perspective, like whenever you judge, for example, other people, you are in a state of darkness when you do that, because you are looking upon them with a projection. And if you want to see projection as, it's like a movie theatre where you've got the movie camera projecting onto the screen, like in those big theatres. That's what the mind does when it projects onto a blank screen and says it's good or bad. I tend to use the word discernment, meaning I'm just sort of looking at something with discernment. I'm not in judgment of it, but for example, I could look at, I'll give you an example of judgment. And people don't understand it. I've said this to my mother when she's been clearly judging. I said, Mom, judgment is when you're looking at something and saying it's bad, it's wrong, it's evil, right? Discernment is seeing it as it is. So I could look at this cup and I could say, oh, look at this cup. What a boring colour. Look at it. It's plastic. It's bad for the environment. Some people could agree with that. It's, it's throwaway. So I'm projecting negative onto it. Look at that. It's cheap. Coffee's good. If I look at it with discernment, I go, it is, let's say, 10, 15 inches long. It is a kind of a blacky brown colour. It's got a plastic lid. It's got a little part there where I drink from, spout. It's made out of paper, cardboard. It's come from trees. That's discernment. I'm not judging it as right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what it is. But if I was to go really deep, scientifically, I could go into the molecular structure of this cup. Is it a cup? What holds it together? Swirling atoms, oscillating at a certain vibration, which gives it the illusion of solidity. So that's a perspective looking on the cup in a range of ways. It could be all true from a discerning perspective. From a judgment perspective, we say it's good or bad. There's a story about a guy who, very briefly broke his leg. And everyone goes, oh, that's bad luck. You broke your leg. Terrible, terrible. Then they came and recruited young men to go to war. They go, thank God you broke your leg. That was a good thing. And on it goes. So we can say good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. What if we just skip all of that and go, okay, well, let's see what the outcome of this is. Let's see what the clashing up does. What good comes from this? Because that's what we're really looking for, is the good. Sure, the bad things happen, but stop focusing on the bad. Let's focus on the good. What do we want? It doesn't mean you become rainbowed, what's the word? Sort of idealistic. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. No worries, something terrible. Oh, it's good. It's good. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, okay, out of this abuse, what came out of it? Wisdom. What came out of the abuse? A wider knowledge that these practices happen. What came out of the abuse? The fact that I wasn't loving myself enough, and that was the true protection that I needed in order to not want to end my life. What came out of the abuse? Oh, the other is in pain. I didn't realise that. I saw them as the perpetrator. They're suffering. What came out of that? Compassion. And what came out of compassion? A desire to unify, a desire to heal, a desire to love more deeply. Do you see what I mean? This is not idealistic, pie in the sky, Pollyanna-ish. This is what good came out of this, rather than you are evil, you are this, you are that. That's identifying and demonizing people in a way that makes them feel bad. That then brings more darkness into them, and your darkness permeates them the minute you judge them. I believe if you truly want peace on earth, you have to look into your own judgment. You have to look into your own negativity, because you're opening yourself up to justification to harm someone else. You have to be very careful. We can become blind to our own prejudices. Okay, so the idea here is going back to this book. I should really read it like from here. What they're saying here is Australia used to be a land of fair go, humble and colloquial. The fair go is our true identity for equality and justice. Well, that's great to hear. Today, this virtue is being turned upside down. This is primarily due to attempts to impose an increasingly intolerant secular humanism. So that they've already identified secular humanism here as intolerant. Well, I would be a humanist. I'm secular, and I'm not intolerant. I actually am very tolerant. But I am going to speak the truth to you, because that's love. Love speaks the truth. That's diversity. So what they're saying is attempts to impose an increasingly intolerant secular humanism on Christians and churches. So this is specifically a Christian document. Anti-Christian prejudice, sometimes called Christianophobia, I've never heard of that. Is it true? Is raising its ugly head. Over the last 2 decades, a blind eye seems to have been turning increasingly often by the authorities to the issue of religious freedoms. Furthermore, the rise of anti-discrimination legislation has had the side effects of hampering religious freedom. I don't know about that. I'd have to look at the cases. The failure of Parliament to accommodate the need for broad religious freedom in association with same-sex marriage. Now we're getting specifics. So there's a problem here with same-sex marriage. Laws has inevitably led to one sectional interest winning at the expense of others, whose rights are being eroded. Well, okay, let's have a look at I have to laugh at this a little bit. No disrespect intended. Just I'm remembering my mum running a soup kitchen as a Christian and gay people coming to it. And I've said this before. She made friends with them. She even took them into her caravan. I was so impressed of her ability to look beyond what she'd been taught to her compassion in giving them a place to stay because they had nowhere to go. It was actually an extraordinary act when she did that. So you can overcome, and I would think Jesus would open the door to prostitutes. Jesus opened the door to thieves. In other words, he was trying to teach unconditional love, and that includes people who are homosexual. I do not believe Jesus would have said that they go to hell. I doubt it. So again, the book that you're reading from, I know that books were removed from that book, I believe by the Vatican. So I wonder what those books were that were removed. You have to be careful whenever you're reading words, because the source, the highest love, comes beyond words. And it's whenever you feel love for someone. So I can already feel reading this that they're identifying problems with same-sex marriage. And they're saying they're winning the sectional, they're calling them sectional interests. Well, they're not. They're sort of sexual, not sectional interests. I can only reflect to you that it's not my business to tell someone who they should love and have sex with. Providing it's two consenting adults over the age of 18, I have no issue with it. And I suspect most Australians don't have an issue with it. But I can understand the problem when you're coming from a belief system, and I'm not saying you're right or wrong, okay, because it's not really for me to be in judgment of you either. It's like, yes, this is my view, but you're entitled to yours as well. And I do say that with respect. But I guess I kind of come into this when I see that there is a clash happening here that could become harmful. And we don't want that on either side. We want everybody to be safe and living the life that they choose. So they say here that they believe that there was a greater number of threats and actual acts of violence against Christians than had occurred anywhere else in the English-speaking world. Now, a former Harvard government minister, Kevin Andrews, said, "It may come as a surprise to Australians to learn that there is very little legal protection for freedom of religion and belief in this nation. This is evidence that has been given by legal and constitutional experts to the Human Rights Subcommittee inquiry into freedom of religion and belief." Well, I would just say to that I don't think we need legal protections. I think everybody already has grown up with that acceptance of diverse religion. And I haven't seen anyone or heard of anyone attacking Christians. I don't see that. Look, if you go overseas, you can see there are Christian minorities that have been attacked for sure, but not in Australia. Australia is extremely egalitarian. And that's not to say there aren't incidences, there probably are. But I don't think as a group that I've never heard it from my mother. She's certainly never indicated to me that she felt persecuted in any way, ever. So I can only go there. And as for my friend who's gay, she's never had any clash with a Christian person ever. She actually met Mother Teresa. She said it was the most extraordinary experience meeting Mother Teresa. She also had a heterosexual marriage. She had 2 children. So she's been on both sides of the fence. And I found her to be an incredible egalitarian. She was probably one of the best business managers I've ever come across. Very fair-minded. You know, she didn't impose her sexuality on anybody. She treated you as a friend. You never felt pressured. She was just like anybody else. That's what I saw. Anyway, that's not to say there aren't exceptions to the rule. There probably are. The constitutions of the various Australian states do not contain any provisions relating to freedom of religion. Okay, so it goes on and puts that case. So they want an act in Parliament is what they're saying for freedom of religion. I would just say I don't want freedom of intolerance. Although I have to say, see, immediately the truth comes to me and it goes, well, people will be intolerant. You can't legislate away morality. It's like people are going to do what people are going to do, but do we put them in jail is probably the key thing here. Or do we look at it as a social issue where we need to dialogue about it, the type of society we want to have? So we're using laws to control people and make people be tolerant. I think it's better to educate. I was teaching real hope, peace, non-violence, anti-bullying. So responsibility, empathy, awareness, love, honesty, oneness, peace, enjoyment, and service is what I taught children. So if we were looking at religion, I would say empathy, stand in the shoes of the person who's religious. I would say love each other. Let's extract out of that religion what we resonate with. For me, it's unconditional love, and love is the answer. They're the things I extract. The rest I don't need to know, because I think love is it. Everyone has a right to go. It's not even a right. You're going to do it anyway. It's not a God-given right. It is what it is. And in that sense, it's a God-given right. God allows us to be whatever we want to be, and we live through the experience of that. There may be a consequence if we're negative. There will be a consequence if we're negative. There'll be a consequence if we're positive. That's the way of it. So it goes on to say, okay, let me just cut to it a bit. They're saying there should be a state-approved set of beliefs relating to the nature of marriage, family life, and sexual ethics. State-approved sounds like legislation. I don't agree with that. No, I think that's imposition. That individuals should be required to undertake activities which support these state-approved beliefs. No, I don't want to be forced into activities. I've already had the job provider system forcing me to work for the dole. No. Which support these state-approved beliefs. No, I don't want state-approved beliefs. I want the freedom of my own belief. Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I want to believe what I want to believe. I don't want you to impose it on me. Even when they conflict with their own religious beliefs. Definitely not. That's imposition. That's forcing people. That's mind control. I don't vote for that. That individuals would be prohibited from some aspects of the free exercise of their religion, such as preaching and seeking to convince others of the truth of their beliefs. You can't stop people from preaching where these conflict with the new state-approved sets of beliefs. That is a religious belief system in government. Sorry, getting passionate here. No, I definitely don't support that. How can one talk about intolerance and then ascribe a state? Hang on, let's get the exact words here. New state-approved set of beliefs. This is religion coming into government. A particular religion. This is not religious freedom. This is the freedom of one religion to ascribe new state-approved sets of beliefs, and that others are prohibited from the free exercise of their religion. So when I had the inspiration in the other video about freedom of religion, I was feeling it as the freedom of all religion, not one. That's not dissimilar to the extremism I saw in Afghanistan, where Islam, in that case, was forcing everyone. It was the only religion. If you believed in anything else, you became the persecuted minority. Now, Christians have experienced that. It's not fun. Okay, here we go. Had they foreseen this possibility, then undoubtedly the authors of the Federal Constitution would have written it not merely to prevent any religious belief being imposed in Australia, but to prevent any belief system, religious or non-religious, being imposed on Australians. This is our heritage, Australia, the land of the fair go, and it is slipping away before our eyes. We've got here, separation of church and state was set up to protect the church from the state, not the other way around. This is Federal Treasurer Scott Morrison, 4th of December 2017. Okay, I have another perspective for you, Scott. God bless you. And as you know, I love you. The separation of church and state was to protect the people from the religious extremism becoming embedded in the state. My example of Afghanistan is a case in point. So no, I don't agree with that. It's not about protecting the church. If it was protecting the church, we would have had them fused. The church would have been the state. Anti-Christian violence. Now, the minute I see that, then we're setting up an us and them. The minute we create division, We're not in unity, and it's not unconditional love. What does anti-Christian violence? I've never even heard of any here in Australia. Christians in public life are increasingly facing threats and even violence because of their beliefs. My mother's never, ever, ever, and her husband, they're Christian, and all the friends that they know, I've met pastors and everything. They've come to my mum's house. I've not heard one say that they were persecuted, not one. Some of this violence is committed by individuals from minority groups. So now we're isolating a group that's against them, which are themselves subject to hate crime. See, that in itself. So they themselves are subject to hate crime. So now we're getting a scenario here of this is the evil other, and that's my concern. The government appears reluctant to tackle or even to acknowledge this Christianophobia. Well, I don't know. Is that true? Scott Morrison is Prime Minister now, and he seems to think he's Christian. So I don't know about that. Maybe they're reluctant because it's not happening. Or if it is happening, well, it should be taken to court immediately. Let me just sit with that for a moment. Christianophobia, people who are anti-Christian. I don't think I've met anyone who is. There are people who don't like religion, I know that, who don't believe in God. But I've never, ever seen anyone attack a Christian. Not yet, not in Australia. Let me just sit with it for a moment. So the words coming up for me is if there's a conflict. So let's just say someone doesn't like Christians. Why? Let's say they say, well, I could, maybe I have to sit with why. Why would they not like Christians? They don't want to be preached at. They don't believe it relates to their life. It's 2,000 years old. They don't believe a person walked the earth who was imbued as God. Some may not like the devil idea either because they don't believe in it. I actually find it very hard to find the hate in it, to be honest. It's hard to see. Okay, so they're saying there's Christianophobia. Alarmingly, as has been seen in other countries such as the UK, the timing of such violent incidents suggests that the violence may be marching in step with advocacy actions promoting the ideological agenda of particular groups by government bodies. See, that's very convoluted. Most people will find it hard to understand that statement. It should be a cause of serious concern and embarrassment. Okay, they're telling us how we should feel. During the recent postal survey, okay, same-sex marriage has come up. Australia witnessed a far greater level of threat and actual acts of violence directed at Christians. I never saw that. Than any other country in the English-speaking world. Okay, I would have to, as a peacemaker, say, okay, what was the other side of that? How many Christians were anti, and there's a lot of them that were anti-gay because they believe it's a sin, right? Hence Israel Folau's comment. I don't know those who are homosexuals have any ideology in respect of religion, because you'll find there's people who are homosexual who are in religions as well. I actually heard a very good interview with a guy who was Christian, who was gay. And he talked about how he experienced having to try and deny his homosexuality because he didn't want to be ousted from the church. Very strong views about it being immoral and evil. And again, those people are entitled to believe what they want to believe. It's not for me to say you're not, because I think there's learnings that come from it. I personally don't see evil per se, because I believe there's ignorance. I believe in confusion. I actually believe in the essential goodness of everybody. I really do. I really believe everyone, if you really drill down into people, you'll see goodness. Doesn't mean they don't do things that aren't kind. They do. Or violent. They do. But for the most part, I do believe people seek to do good. So, okay, so this is a conflict between the Christians and, well, some Christians. I don't think all Christians think like this. I've certainly met, I mean, I know that they don't believe it's true. Like, they don't believe homosexuality is natural. They don't. And I just say to you, that's fine, believe what you want. I really do. I'm very open. But I can't imagine that the homosexuals are going for them, other than them feeling threatened. They might be feeling threatened. Because it seems to me the religious vote, this vote was for to stop homosexuality. I wonder. That's what went through my mind. Because why are we having a postal vote? It's really a social issue, and it's like, what right do I have to vote on someone's sexuality? It's not my place to do that. It's not going to stop them. If you feel that desire, you're going to do it. So I think it's far better to dialogue and understand why, what motivates them. And yeah, I can see there's people can be influenced in this way. But then what is God in all of this? It's like God allows free will. Why does God allow free will? Because we're here to learn from those diverse and contrasting people. They're contrasting with their beliefs, actually. And in this case, biological, because they have a desire. They actually are attracted. What about pedophilia? I haven't heard strong religious condemnation, although some of the churches are doing it since it's been put out in the media. But these pedophilia situations have been going on for a long time with the knowledge of the church. What do you do with that morally? It's like, this is having sex with children, same sex with children from within the church itself. That has to be looked at. You know, you talk about gays. Well, what's that when a priest is gay? He may well be heterosexual too. It could be the suppression of his sexuality. But then what of his lack of empathy for the child who is screaming? That is a violent act that destroys a child. You know, I'm not seeing anything in here about pedophilia and the outrage about that in this book. So let's read on and see what it says here. Okay, it's saying here that today the heritage is being turned upside down. This is primarily due to attempts to impose an increasingly intolerant secular humanism. Well, what does that mean? On Christians and churches. Christianophobia is raising its ugly head. Over the last 2 decades, some of our politicians have actively sought to restrict religious freedom, while judges and the police have increasingly interpreted existing laws on freedom of religion in the narrowest possible sense. So it sounds to me like I guess what I would say in reflection to that is, if that religious narrative is divisive and is likely to incite violence, I would say then it should be restricted in respect of health and safety. In other words, we don't promote the attacking of people, anyone, whether they're Christian or gay, it doesn't matter. I'm a peacemaker. I'm no advocate of violence imposed on anyone. And that's inclusive of verbal violence. Well, under the Bullying and the Stalking Act here in Victoria, verbal attacks on people that bully and harass them, this is a criminal offence. Why? Because you're causing psychological harm to that other, and that can be far worse than being beaten up. Bullying is probably one of the most violent forms of destruction of a person. Children get bullied for being gay, and certainly Christians have been bullied. You know, I did look into some of that, and I thought, gee, I didn't realise in certain countries how that as a minority became harassed. And what I'm really seeing is that anyone that's in a minority that looks vulnerable, doesn't matter, and this is outside of all of this and inclusive of all of this too, I've seen that they often do get attacked, and it's to do with power, not love. I tend to go there. What's this about? How's the power working here? Who's seeking to have power over someone else? When I see that, I see love is not there, because love is equality. Love is sharing, caring, revealing and healing. That's my understanding. So they go on to say that one reason is that we have forgotten our heritage and virtue. Well, I haven't. Even without explicit domestic laws for religious freedom, Australia has in past decades protected freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is different from religious freedom. Freedom of religion is about all religions being free to express their religion, but if they incite violence, I do think authorities have to become involved, because we're here to keep the peace. But it's not one specific group that should have religious freedom, it's everybody. Our courts and law enforcement have been influenced by the British heritage of freedom of religion, religious freedom, which developed over the centuries from Magna Carta, which they said. They keep going there. I'm just reading on, and I'll just, because I'm going to cut to the chase because of the time. It's getting a bit long. This is from John Howard. Of all of the influences on Australian society, none has been more profound than the Judeo-Christian ethic. I always find it odd that you have to demonstrate your tolerance by denying your own heritage. I don't really understand that comment. I'm not saying there hasn't been a Judeo, and that's Judeo, so that's Jewish, I'm thinking, imagining. I'm not really up on this. Christian ethic. I think there's truth in that. That has had an influence here for sure. So I'm not demonstrating my tolerance by denying my heritage. I'm just not drawn to becoming a Christian. But I definitely promote Christian ethics. Love thy neighbour. Do unto others as you would have done to you. The Garden of Eden, I often get it in my poetry. Garden of Eden, which is nature. Love is the answer. I definitely subscribe to. That there is one God, I feel that. But that, even the word one is not quite accurate, because I'm coming at it from a dualistic perspective, and this energy, it's an energy, it's in form in the sense that it informs the creation of the universe, but it's actually an energy that's doing it. So it's formless, is my knowing. So it's not possible for it to love one group over another, because it created all of it. And I guess I'll leave it there, because, to be honest, I'm not going to promote anything that divides people from each other. Love your neighbour is to love the neighbour. If they're a gay person next door and you're Christian, love thy neighbour. The truth will set you free. I'm just going to go still for a moment, and then I'm going to finish, because it's time. What you see in another is in yourself, are the words that are coming to me. What you deny is actually in you, because you recognise it and you are rejecting it. You have to go into that deeply on any judgments you're making. For those who are orchestrating the division through religion, I'm just going to go there in my mind, in my spirit. We are one, each on a unique journey and blueprint. You are here to firstly go through what you're not, in order to find out who you really are. Every being, inclusive of the species, is loved. Nothing is unacceptable in God's world. Nothing. Even the most heinous criminal is loved. Why? Because when you look through the behaviour, you see the Christ light within. I feel to talk about Jesus for a moment. See the joy's coming to me? Jesus. Jeshua. I call Jesus Jeshua. Let's give Jeshua some inspiration. Blessed are the peacemakers. Thanks. I just got to go inward because that's the only way I can connect is inwardly. I could cry, because I'm going to the Garden of Gethsemane. There was an angel in the garden. Why hast thou forsaken me? In this moment of fear, he had a moment of fear. This is unconditional love for the most part, because he was being persecuted because of his preaching of love. And he felt some fear there. Crucifixion's a very, very painful experience, and many are crucified in this world. And I'm not talking religion here, I'm talking on lots of levels. People are crucified, particularly when they're judged. I have my arms around him in that garden. I feel such a love and compassion for him, for all those who have felt like him, who have felt judged and who have been condemned to death. I see all the jails in the world. I see those who have them in electric chairs. I see the beheadings and those who orchestrated these violent extremist groups for their own ends. Forgiveness. Forgive, for they know not what they do. Everyone is forgivable. It is forgiving yourself, your prejudices and your judgments and your intolerance and your anger and your righteousness, whoever you are. And this can be someone who's not religious, it can be someone who is. Doesn't matter. We're all one. We all share really the same negativities and love-based projections into the world. I just want to connect with Jeshua because I really feel strong pull there. I'm seeing the rock. Yeah, he rose, and he did. He rose. He went into human form, actually. Lived on. He had a wife. Mary Magdalene, wasn't it? Miriam. His wife was what they said was a prostitute. There's an example in that. You can love anyone. that society believes is a sinner, or particular groups think are sinners. It's sort of feeling the Sermon on the Mount. People at the time were in great darkness. It's like the darkness we're moving into now. And they needed and wanted someone to show them the way, because they didn't know how to deal with such a dark world at that time, very ignorant. And he came in as a light. Like many others have. He wasn't the only one. He was a light into the darkness, but he cursed it not. Now, why did Jesus not curse the darkness? Because he didn't resist. He allowed. This is the allowance. That's a critical message. It's not to fight against. That creates division, them and us, holier than thou, when we are one family. The moment you fight the darkness that's in yourself, whenever you see an enemy, whenever you judge, you're actually resisting the darkness which comes into you. That's why some of these priests have fallen from grace. The pedophilia is the pink elephant in the room here. They denied their sexuality, saying it was dirty, unholy for a priest to have sex. There's also power issues in the hierarchies of the church, just as there are in any organisation where there's hierarchy, where people are in superior positions to others. They lose the equality. They become consumed by the power. That's also another form of darkness that enters the light. The conspiracies of silence within the churches around the rape of children, of innocent children, is the dark permeating the light. So whilst they're reciting from their Bibles and they're preaching to their congregations, they're having situations where they're actually committing violations against other people. I had a video that I did on George Pell, and I talked about illumination. This is also the religion of the occult in what they call the Black Mass, where powerful people in high positions have come into churches. Certainly there was a whistleblower here in Australia who talked about Ballarat, and that she saw political figures, religious figures involved in what they called the Black Mass, which was sacrificing not only, and this is certainly not a minimising of it, women, but they were also hypnotising children and they were sacrificing them. It's murder. Scott Morrison recently has apologised for pedophilia in Australia. I don't think apology is enough. Same with the Indigenous would feel that when we had the big apology for what they went through. We need to translate that into good action. We need to look at religion and the suppressions in religion that say this is evil, this is good. As I said, what you resist persists, what you look at disappears. Resist not evil was Jesus' words. Because the moment you resist the evil within yourself, because we're made up of both, It's the nature of duality on the planet, the light and the dark. When you resist it, it actually worsens. And I'll give you another example of that suppression. When you suppress your emotions, you're more likely to explode in anger, and you're more likely to commit acts of violence because of that suppressed emotional state. Healthy emotional intelligence means that you experience your emotions right through to when they disappear. So if I'm angry, I need to talk it through and get it out. I do poetry and things like that, and I find I naturally transmute it. I naturally turn it around to the light if I'm feeling upset or hurt. You can use the arts as a form of therapy to bring us back into the light. Creative is the feminine. So when we come into harmony with the feminine and the masculine, churches are very masculine. Interestingly enough, the pagan, if you look into the pagan stuff, they're quite feminine. A lot of women in it. But I'm a great believer in both, in the feminine and the masculine, in the one community, reaching for the truth of love, and then allowing that community to evolve on the basis of that union. So this has been a very, very long video, but it's very inspired too. I was really getting strong inspiration today to do it, even though there's other things I want to do. I'm not getting the chance to do it because I'm sitting here with this in my car. So, the feeling I'm just getting now to say is to do with the casting of the stones. When we cast the stone of judgment at someone, the idea of the log in one's eye, you cannot sit in judgment of others, whether they're gay or not, without looking into your own eyes at your own prejudices. You have to take the log out of your own eye in order to see without a story, to see the human being sitting at a table drinking a cup of tea, not saying they're gay, not saying they're a this, they're a that, they're a Christian, they're a Muslim, they're a terrorist, they're they're rich, or whatever it is, whatever the judgment is. Person sitting drinking a cup of tea. Discernment. Remember the cup? Discernment. See them with clear seeing, and the prejudice disappears. But you have to look into your own eye at the prejudices that you have held as truth. Whenever they divide our world, they are not of God. Yet they are, because we're here to be who we're not in order to be who we are. Do you see the dichotomy in which I've just said? That's how it is in this dualistic world. It is, but it's not. It's not hard and fast, right and wrong. It's not. You have to travel through the dark in order to find the light as well. But if you fight what you think is dark, you are inviting it into yourself. And that's what most don't see. That's why we have non-judgment. That's why we say, love your brother or sister. Love is the answer. These things are not just little throwaway lines. You have to practice to love the very one that you judge the most, because something within you is in denial. There is no other. There's only one of us in the room. We are all connected. So with that, I'm going to leave you in peace and love. We all have a right to our viewpoint, and I respect. Even these guys, they have a purpose. I understand that, and I send them love too. I don't obviously see the same way, but I am in a space of full acceptance of others to believe and experience their darkness. If they're dividing from others, it's a darkness. They need to do that in order to find the light, because that's what they're truly seeking. And I'm in great support of that search. And I'm here for everybody. So sending you love and peace and Christ consciousness. May you come to really experience the full contact with this higher love that has no words, but it sees you as you truly are, absolutely beautiful. You are holy, the beautiful. You are the peace in which you are searching. And really, there's no mistakes on this journey. We all are going home. Your happy destiny is unavoidable, for sure. So with that, I send you love.